lot like old school Doom with new school graphics, and if you can shoot to the beat, you're better off. Basically, the more you can be in sync with the rhythm, quote unquote, the more destruction you will cause. I assume that means more damage. It really looks like a high-paced shooter, though, that incorporates a lot of the elements from the recent Doom resurgence, more or less. But for whatever reason, it comes off a little more old school to me, which is interesting because of the rhythm element just not really being a part of your typical FPS. It's one of those games where I think it could be really, really fantastic. There is a demo to play. I have downloaded and played it. I don't know that I've played it long enough to really give you an accurate judgment of the game, but what I did play, I did enjoy. The game features a soundtrack from Serge Tankian of System of a Down fame, and it comes out for the Xbox Series, PS5, and Windows September 15th. And number 9 is No Place for Bravery, a game that wears its influences on its sleeve. There's a lot of Sekiro, a lot of Dark Souls in there, but it does definitely have its own identity as well. It's really a gorgeous looking game, and they've done an incredibly good job of making a ton of varied, well-animated, cool-looking enemies, and that's kind of what has me most interested in it. The world is one where these giant monsters have appeared and more or less made it really suck for people, you know? Like I said, it's slightly inspired by Sekiro in terms of you see the posture meter. You can bring them down posture-wise and then execute them, and that's very Sekiro-like. But it's also got some platforming that I think probably is going to work a lot better, frankly, than platforming in Dark Souls, because it's 2D, and to be frank, it's just way easier to make platforming good in a 2D game. The game's also designed as somewhat of a Metroidvania, so a lot of these things are very interesting to integrate into the Souls-like formula. I'm excited for this. I think it looks like a fantastic game. No Place for Bravery is coming to Switch and PC on the 22nd. At number 8 is The Last of Us Part 1. So, yeah, Last of Us has been remade already. The version that we saw on PS4 Pro was actually a pretty good-looking version. However, The Last of Us Part 2 is a significantly better-looking game, and now The Last of Us Part 1 looks as good. And I know there's going to be a lot of people who are like, this has been released too many times. I think that there's actually a good reason to release it. The original and even the remake still has that kind of look from its era. The era before video game lighting really got good. Last of Us looks good, don't get me wrong. It's, looking back, really a good looking game, but it still has that I'm trying to make the lighting look like real lighting without being able to look. You'll know exactly what I mean if you look at comparison videos between the versions. But at this point, we all know the story. It's a sad one. It's a good one. It's really well told, and now you can pretty much see it the best possible way. I can't imagine a lot of people really haven't played it, but I'll say this, I haven't bought it since the original version, and I'm kind of itching to go through it again. Last of Us Part 1 comes out September 2nd on the PS5. At number 7 is Valkyrie Elysium. Now, I don't know if you remember way back, and I mean way back, but the original Valkyrie Elysium was released on the PlayStation, and really only got major traction, at least as far as I can remember, when it released on PSP in 2006. It was a game that kind of felt like a platformer that had RPG battles in it. It was actually a pretty sweet game. Valkyrie Elysium is the 5th game in this series, and it drops the traditional turn-based combat in favor of an action RPG style combat. Essentially, the point of this game is to stop Ragnarok. To me, it kind of looks like a Dark Souls Light type formula. You do have some of the more over-the-top Japanese action type elements that are in there, and it overall looks like a pretty interesting game altogether. Obviously, fans of the original, it remains to be seen just how good it works as an action RPG, but we'll see when Valkyrie Elysium lands on the PlayStation September 20th. At number 6 is the Dio Field Chronicle, which is a strategy RPG coming from Square Enix. However, it's not tile-based like what you would expect out of Square Enix. Obviously, it's a Square Enix game looking at the visual style. The game is much more like XCOM in terms of how it works. There's a demo out if you want to play it. It's great. I would highly recommend it, actually. An empire is fighting an alliance. It wins, and then it turns its attention towards a kingdom called Alatane, and the story focuses on a mercenary group called the Blue Foxes, which is affiliated with Alatane. I don't know, it's a decent setup. The gameplay is actually what's very good here. In terms of what you would expect, it's not exactly XCOM, because there is an obvious JRPG, Final Fantasy Tactics lineage that is here. And I'm going to overall say, just based off the demo, which is pretty long, it's like a 3-hour demo. I didn't get to go through all of it because obviously we aren't doing any in-depth content on this game as of yet. But I will say, it's great. What I played made me definitely want to play the whole game, and I definitely will be when it comes out for the PlayStations, the Xboxes, Nintendo Switch, and PC. And number 5 is Splatoon 3. So everything we've seen in Splatoon 3 doesn't seem like it does anything to just like totally reverse anything from anywhere else in Splatoon. It looks like a refined iteration of what we've gotten from the first 2 games. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that it's been a little due for some extra stuff, a new coat of paint, so to speak, for a while now. I'm happy we're going to be seeing a variety of new weapons, such as the Ink Vac, which apparently lets you actually take enemy paint that's already laid down and fire it back at enemies. I've unfortunately not had any hands-on with Splatoon 3, so other than what you've seen, I haven't seen any more. It's also got a card game apparently added into it, and it seems likely that there's microtransactions in the game. My opinion is that it's going to have something to do with the card game, which I don't know, I could go either way on. Like some inside game card games are great, Gwent for instance, but who knows, we'll see. Splatoon 3 is landing on the Switch on the 9th. And number 4 is Solstice, which you're gonna right off think of Dark Souls. The name of it just reeks of it. It's a dark fantasy looking game, etc., etc. However, take a closer look. It's much faster in pace for one. Kind of reminding me in some ways of an Automata, or perhaps some kind of, or DMC inspired lineage. Platinum Games, Capcom type stuff, and that is great. For a little extra, the ghost following you around is actually your little sister. She does some assisting in combat, but also is essentially the major catalyst for all of the puzzles in the game, at least from what I've read. This isn't necessarily a game that I feel like, wow, I've never seen anything like it. However, it is a refreshing mix of a few different things that I think look really cool together, and I am a sucker for anything that has DMC or Platinum influence. Very obviously this does. Solstice comes out for PC, PS5, and the Xbox Series September 20th. And number 3 is Asanzo, a tactical FPS set in the Alpine Ridge during World War I, where the Great War is being fought on the Italian front. If you have played Verdun or Kennybird, you know exactly what type of game this is. This does, in my opinion, look like the most aesthetic pleasing of the two. I like the Alpine warfare. I like the uneven ground in the mountains. It seems to me a kind of unique place to be doing battle. And the previous 2 titles, I think, did a very good job of rendering a location and really simulating great first-person battles within the context of them. Asanzo is coming to the PlayStations, the Xboxes, and Windows on the 13th. And number 2 is Return to Monkey Island, a return to the old point-and-click games with the series creator Ron Gilbert at the helm. I don't want to make any assumptions as to exactly what this game will be on account, to be completely frank, we're talking about a very, very long-removed sequel to some beloved games. The original Monkey Island games are big in terms of adventure games, and there is a lot of pressure on the developers to do this. I do love the visual style they've decided to go with for it, though. If you've ever seen the originals, they look nothing like this. This is a much more highly stylized form of art, and I think it works really well on account. Yeah, there is definitely a charm to the old pixel art. I don't think it's the kind of charm that you could go back to exactly the same and get the same kind of reaction that, like, say, Mario or Sonic get. So I'm happy they decided to move forward rather than backward in that respect. I do really hope that they're able to live up to the kind of story, puzzles, and situational, contextual stuff that really them and a few Sierra games were at the full top of that genre. Return to Monkey Island is coming to Switch and PC September 19th. And finally, at number 1 is Steel Rising, a sort of eclectic, eccentric-looking action RPG where the French Revolution has been suppressed by the king, and you, some kind of automation robot thing, have to take down the army yourself. It's insane looking. It's kind of a alternate history 1700s setting where there's machines and a lot of crazy looking stuff. Honestly, it's a really cool looking game. If it delivers without being weird and corny, the combat looks good, the story looks interesting and like a good setup for a game. And I think I'm definitely going to give Steel Rising a spin when it comes out on PS5, the Xbox Series, and PC on the 8th. Now, we do have some bonus games for you. Firstly, it's FIFA 23, the 30th and final installment of the FIFA series. It's going to be called something else, but you know FIFA is going to still be around, right? I don't personally expect a lot different out of this. They've incorporated an animation system that does look pretty nice, but it's FIFA. You know what you're getting. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, it's not for you. Slime Rancher 2 is next. A kind of weird, much more colorful version of the Harvest Moon type life sim where you're building a slime ranch. That's coming to the Xbox Series and PC on the 22nd. Moon Scars, a 2D hack and slash platformer with a dark fantasy story that gives me kind of Dark Souls meets Castlevania vibes. Lands on the PlayStations, the Xboxes, PC, and Switch the 27th. NBA 2K23, which kind of looks like an iterative progression of last year's game, as per usual. Nothing major that I'm aware of. Still, NBA 2K is a great series, and we all know this at this point. That lands on the PlayStations, the Xboxes, Nintendo Switch, and PC on the 9th. Outer Wilds is coming to the next generation on PC and Xbox Series. And Temtem, a massively multiplayer creature collection adventure game that reeks of Pokemon. That's coming to the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series, Switch, and PC on the 6th. That's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter, Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on Gamers. There are video game missions out there that just grab you from start to finish, and then they stay with you. It's not necessarily that they'll shock you or do something totally off the wall, although they might. It's just that they're that good. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Game Ranks, 10 of the most legendary video game missions ever. Starting off at number 10, it's Titanfall 2's Effect and Fog. Now, Titanfall is a relatively new series for this kind of a list because it really only has one real single-player campaign, and that makes it all the more impressive that it happens to feature probably one of the most brilliant and iconic video game missions ever. Like, we're talking about the mission where you get the device that lets you freely travel between the past and present. You only get it really for one mission, and it's cool as hell. Because you do so much with the limited amount of time you have it. You use it to avoid enemies, you can get the drop on soldiers, you can get around environmental hazards, and every single time you do any of these things, it's beyond satisfying. It's fun because you can faintly see the ghosts of soldiers in the past, which makes it easy to reposition yourself and get the drop on them when they show up. The whole thing is amazingly overpowered. These guys can barely touch you with the proper application of time travel, and it's straight up awesome. The guys who created Titanfall 2, Respawn, were made up of former Infinity Ward people, which that company did some of the best Call of Duty campaigns. Like, they just know how to do a great FPS campaign, and Effect and Cause is probably one of the best of all time. Honestly, basically every level in Titanfall 2 is really great, but that gimmick just makes that level stand out. And number 9, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare Theft from Above. Now, we've covered all that pretty extensively on this channel already. We actually did an entire video about it, so that's why we decided to talk about another truly iconic mission from Call of Duty. 4. This is the one with the AC-130 gunship. The mission before it, Hunted, actually sets things into motion, where the SAS Special Forces team, led by Captain Price, is shot down by a Stinger missile over Russia, and they're forced to escape from hostile forces that are hunting them down. It takes a while, but once the gunship gets into position, that's when the perspective changes from the guys on the ground to Spectre Gunship's TV operator. You're even given a bird's eye view of the entire area, and you've got to take out the enemies to keep Price's squad safe until they can be distracted.
Okay, he's moving again. Rolling it. You got him. Copy. Smoke him. Yeah, good kill. I see lots of little pieces down there. You gonna get him? We got a moving vehicle here. Negative. Do not engage. I repeat, do not engage any vehicles on the main highway.
It is a tense and strangely eerie mission where you're destroying faceless enemies from a TV monitor while you're given instructions in a very professional and detached way. It's a stark contrast to the chaos on the ground and calls to mind a lot of real-life night vision bombing footage. It also kind of makes me think about how horrifying war is now. Anyway, fighting enemies, determining who's friend and who's enemy, that's really what makes the whole mission tense. It's just an all-around experience that captures the feeling of modern warfare, maybe more than any other mission in the game. And number 8 is Grand Theft Auto 5's The Big Score. Now, GTA 5 is a game all about heist, and these missions are unsurprisingly the highlights of that. They're all great, from the first one, which is a basic jewelry store heist, to the last one. But in our mind, the last one's probably the most memorable, obviously. You get two options for how you want it all to play out. Either you take the subtle approach, which involves robbing gold transport, or the obvious approach, where you just bust into the vault itself and take the gold that way. Both versions of the mission are totally different. They're also both really fun in their own way, but I'm going to focus mainly on the obvious approach because it's way more bombastic than the subtle way. You pretty much end up doing a little bit of everything in this mission. It starts with using a giant drill to bore into the gold vault, then you get into a massive shootout at the dig site while Trevor escapes with a huge pallet of gold hanging from his helicopter. Then the real meat of the mission starts.
It was a whole lot less successful than your lick, but we needed to divide attention. Back it across the bridge! Move or get moved! Beam up the mothership!
There's a massive shootout where you run through the financial district of downtown Los Angeles, blowing anyone, anything, whatever. If it stands in your way, you blow it up. It's like Heat times 100, and it's totally ridiculous in the best way. Once Michael manages to evade the cops, you switch back to Trevor, where you have to maneuver close to the enemy helicopter so Lester can hit them with a rocket launcher. At the end, you dump the gold onto a moving train and bug out. It's over the top, it's fun as hell, it's just great. And number 7 is Red Dead Redemption's And the Truth Will Set You Free. Another Rockstar game with some of the all-time best-in-class missions is the first Red Dead Redemption. Now, there's lots of options, but when I think legendary, my mind goes to this mission. The one where you finally hunt down Dutch Vanderlyn, the leader of the old gang, and your final target. Everything in this game leads up to this very moment. It's pretty much the climax of the whole story, and where traditionally a lot of games would end, everything about it really feels like a final mission. Like you, your agent handlers, all mount up and ride up to the mountains of Dutch stronghold. All of the game's epic theme song plays. What follows is one of the biggest shootouts in the game as you work your way up before confronting Dutch.
Hello again, John. Hello, Dutch. We gotta stop making this. Sure. I got a plan, John. You always got a plan, Dutch. This is a good one. I don't doubt it.
He's not so much your enemy, though, as a broken old man, and instead of facing you, he just kills himself. Even though he's barely in the game, he's a character that leaves a huge impression on me when I played RDR, so it's no surprise that the character plays such a huge role in Red Dead 2. Some people might think that the actual final mission is a little more legendary than this one, but the shootout combined with the amazing soundtrack is really what makes this one stand out in my opinion. And number 6 is Dynasty Warriors 2, Battle at Cooldowns Gate. Now, if you were PlayStation 2 kids, you probably at least rented Dynasty Warriors 2. If people remember anything from this game, it's the objective that simply says, do not pursue Blue. And when they say do not pursue, they mean it, because this guy will mess you up. The line itself is legendary, but the mission itself deserves a lot of recognition as well. It's a lot more basic than a lot of the entries on this list, but it still deserves a mention simply for being one of the most iconic missions in any game of its era. It's always the battle at Cooldowns Gate, and it occurs not just in Dynasty Warriors 2, but in a lot of future Dynasty Warriors games as well. And the general events of the mission are basically the same. There's a gate, and you got to battle at it. At a certain point, a badass warrior named Blue will appear, and you have no chance of beating this person, so you have to avoid him. The mission, for whatever reason, just keeps showing up again and again, and if you played just the second game, though, you remember it. Now, if you played the whole series, it's permanently embedded in your brain, you cannot escape it. When it first came out, Dynasty Warriors 2 was a truly unique game. Getting to play as this unstoppable badass who can plow through hundreds of soldiers felt completely awesome. But this mission, you suddenly find this enemy who's not just a total chump, and like, compared to you who are just able to destroy so many, it actually has some weight, you know? It's a badass mission for different reasons than the others, but still badass nonetheless. And number 5 is Half-Life 2. We don't go to Ravenholm. Half-Life 2 isn't a game with traditional missions exactly, but each part of the game is distinct enough that it feels alright separating them out. It's another game with a lot of standout moments, and a great game as a whole, but Ravenholm just really sticks in people's memories. First, it's the first place you go after getting the gravity gun, and they also really just cut you loose here. It starts off as kind of a horror experience as you're learning how to fight enemies without just shooting them. Ammo's really scarce in this section of the game, so the best way to kill them is to make makeshift projectiles and launch them at them, which definitely takes some getting used to. But once you do, it's beyond awesome. There's like explosives and saw blades littered all over the place. You can use them to slice and blow up swarms of enemies, and strategically place traps